Good. Great. Hello. Ooh, hello. Hello. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Oh, perfect. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Monzo. I hope everyone's had a chance to get some food, if you'd like to, and a drink from the fridges. If not, please go and grab some now. There's a lot of little rice bowls left over, I think. You're very welcome. So I'm really excited to get the Q&A underway. Before we dive straight into that, I've got 3 or 4 or 5 slides. It shouldn't take more than 5 or 6 minutes, but I really want to answer the questions you have, so I'll keep it really, really brief. But overall, thank you so much yet again for turning out in force on is it Monday? A Monday night. I'm sure you all have better things to be doing in the nice weather, but we're humbled that you've come to listen to us answer your questions, so thank you very much. So the first thing I want to talk about is the new Monzo mission statement. Have we blogged about this yet, Naji? Have we blogged about the mission statement? Yeah, we have. Okay, so everyone knows what it is. It's not well, if you read our blog. I just want to talk a few seconds about why we did this. Before Monzo, I was really skeptical about brand. I didn't think it was a real thing. And what I've learned over the last 3.5 years is it's one of the most sort of powerful motivators of human behavior. It's not just sort of the functional features your bank gives you, although they are important as well. It's the kinds of things that you stand for and the kind of things you believe in. I think the mission statement is, at its best, a sort of aspirational kind of goal that we're all working towards. And so I think it's really important to get it right. As a famous TED talker said, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. I think it's very important. So, previously we described Monzo as a financial control center for 1 billion people, which I really liked. It sort of seemed sort of a little bit ambiguous, but bold and ambitious. The problem was control center felt like the inside of a jumbo jet. It's like all these dials everywhere, and you don't really know what to touch in case you crash the airplane and kill people or something. So it didn't seem very friendly or approachable. Actually, we're not trying to make money, we're not trying to build tools for super users, we're trying to make money just work. Just sort of, so you don't have to think about it, almost to get out the way. So instead of a jumbo jet kind of cockpit, we want a little bit more like the iPhone. It just sort of works. Intuitive, easy to figure out how to use. Even my dad has learnt to love his iPhone. He was always the guy who read instruction manual front to back of every electronic device. And we thought 1 billion people, well, the population of the world is growing so quickly that maybe that's not ambitious enough. So what we came up with was Monzo makes money work for everyone. And so I really like that. First of all, I really like alliteration. And there are 3 M's in a row, which really appeals to me. And we break this down a few different ways. If you're Jonas, my co-founder, he immediately discovered that if you put a semicolon about there, Monzo makes money work for everyone. It's no good. So I want to get that one out before like the Daily Mail figure it out. So there are 2 or 3 things going on in here that I really like. The alliteration is first, but make money work. For me, that's a kind of nod to Apple's design thing. It just works. It makes money just work. But secondly, it puts your money to work. I'm really excited about a few new features coming out really soon, which will be about savings and investments. If you've got a pot of money, £1,000, £5,000, we want Monzo to go out and find the best place to invest that money to put it to work. So Monzo makes your money work, puts it to work and earns you an interest rate. So I'm really excited about a few new features we'll have over the next 2 or 3 or 4 months. And then finally, makes money work for everyone. I think that's a reflection both of our ambition. It's not just for 1 billion people, there are 7.7 billion people in the world, so why not all of them? But it's also about our social mission, which is to live life in the modern world today, you need access to finance. And too many people don't have access to finance. They're excluded for whatever reason. And they end up overpaying for things like gas and electricity. They can't get access to credit, so they're forced on payday lenders and doorstop lenders. It's just really hard to exist in the modern world without access to finance. So that's part of our social mission, to make sure that everyone, first of all in the UK, has access to high-quality financial services, and eventually the whole world. So that is our mission statement, and I'm very happy with it. So that's the first thing I'm going to talk about. The second is, if you've been to one of these events in the last 9 months or so, you've probably heard me bang on about unit economics. And if you've definitely been to our all hands every week, this is something I say literally every week. So this is the idea, basically, that last year, each customer, the contribution margin, what that means is basically, say we had 100 customers, you acquire the 101st customer, the 101st customer. What additional cost does that one customer drive, and the additional revenue that one customer drives? So it ignores things like this office space, which is fixed, and engineering salaries, but includes things like customer service, which scales linearly with customer numbers, Stripe top-ups, lending revenue, posting cards, that kind of thing. So what is the marginal revenue and marginal cost for each additional user? That is our contribution margin. Unfortunately, we were gross margin negative, so each extra user drove more cost than they drove revenue. So the faster we grew, the more money we lost, to the extent of about £65 per customer per year. And we grew from almost 0 customers last year to like 500,000. So that explains, a £30 million annual loss, just like a ton of customers, each of which loses you money. I'm delighted to say that moving from prepaid to current account brought the cost from 65 to 35 back in January. And then since January to today, we've gone from a £35 negative contribution to about a £5 negative contribution. So you can see about £35 back at the start of January, we're now at 5. So each additional customer, on average, each additional customer still loses money. New customers actually are making money because we've turned off Stripe top-ups for new customers. This is averaged across the entire customer base. So if you look at just the cohorts who signed up in kind of May or early June, they're already gross margin positive. You may not care about this. It's super, super important for our business because it makes it sustainable and viable in the long term, so we can keep providing the services that you all love to customers for free. Super, super important to us. So what this means basically is it's really good news. We need to keep growing revenue, though. We've cut costs a lot. We need to keep growing revenue to cover all the costs of these events and engineering salaries in the office and what have you. But we've made enormous progress over the last 9 or 10 months or so I'm really, really excited about that. Right, the final thing is goals. We took the decision to publish our quarterly goals, at least at the high level, last quarter. I actually don't know why. I was on a holiday and I came back and they'd been published. I thought it was a great idea, though. In line with our values of transparency, really. So, I'll just whiz through these really quickly. The first goal now, which has changed for a long time, the first goal was unit economics. Sorry, for a long, long time. Now that each customer earns us marginal profit, growth is a solution to our problem and not a cause of our problems. So if you lose money per customer, the more you grow, the more you lose. You dig yourself into a deeper hole. So now in the bottom of that hole, we've leveled out. Now each customer we acquire digs us back out of that hole. So growth is really, really important to us. We're at 800,000 customers now. We should be at 1.5 million by the end of the year and probably 3.5 million by the end of 2019 in the UK. It's very exciting. There are only about 40 million adults. So 3.5, or call it 4, is about 10% of the UK population, which would be really, really cool. Metro Bank, I think, is about 1.2 million customers, so we should surpass them by the end of the year. It's very, very exciting. It's particularly exciting because we did a brand awareness study recently, where we basically surveyed a bunch of people across the country and asked them, both prompted and unprompted, how many had heard of Monzo. It turns out only about 12% or something, 10 or 12%. Only 12% had heard of Monzo. So we've already got 2% of the UK using Monzo, 800k of 40 million, but only 12 are aware. That's 1 in 6 people who know of Monzo uses Monzo. So all we need to do is tell everyone about it, and then we'll get more customers, which is very exciting. Anyway, so goal number 1 is grow. We'll be releasing a bunch of network-driven product features to really drive that. It's not about paid advertising in so much as it is about making the Monzo product better the more friends you have using it. So we have a bunch of ideas we'll be testing out over the next 2 or 3 months, which is very exciting. Second one is revenue. So unsecured lending, that's overdrafts and spread the cost, will be ramping up and rolling out. That's working really well. People seem to really appreciate it. It's transparent and it's flexible and it's entirely opt-in. So we show people this product up front and ask them if they want to turn it on or off. There are no unfair fees or charges. It's just a fixed daily fee of 50p a day up to £1,000. The FCA, just as a side note, are doing a review of overdraft charges at the moment. And there are some things I really agree with, like they're banning the difference between authorised overdrafts and unauthorised overdrafts. And they're actually not removing the charges for bounced payments, which I think is bizarre. And they're proposing a cap on overdraft fees, which again I really agree with. NatWest charges up to about £80 a month at the moment. Santander, by the way, charges you £10 a month to switch your overdraft off. So to avoid fees, it's a £120 a year fee, which is unbelievable. Anyway, the thing I don't agree with is the FCA are proposing a ban on fixed fee overdrafts, so the 50p a day. And actually, we surveyed a bunch of users, and the majority of them, about half actually, preferred a fixed fee. It's just simpler to calculate. You know, if you're 8 days from payday, that's £4. So that's one area I don't agree with them, and we will be responding to their consultation. And frankly, none of you probably care unless you're regulatory lawyers or work at the FCA. We do often get 1 or 2 regulators in the back, so who knows? Anyway, and the final thing is primary accounts. So this is the idea that Monzo's better, or we'd aim to make Monzo better if you put your salary in, because it gives us visibility of all of your spend and basically lets us build more powerful tools to enable you to stay in control. So if we can see your rent or your mortgage, your direct debits, your standing orders, our budgeting predictions become much, much better for you because we can help you set aside the money you need for your whatever payments, put it into a pot, and it just disappears from view. It can also help you save up. So every time you get I'm reading Save More Tomorrow by Shlomo Benatz. He's a behavioral economist who basically studies all of these patterns for helping people save. So one great idea is instead of asking people to save today, it's like next payday, we'll save half of that, or next time you get a raise next year, we'll take half of that raise before you even see it and put it into a savings pot. So these kind of ideas of behavioral economics are super powerful. Anyway, having visibility over all of your spend lets us build those kind of features that let the app work much better for you. So that's why we're emphasizing primary accounts, whether that's a current account switching service or just manually moving all your direct debits over. So those are our 3 headline goals. And I'm very excited to see how we do. I think those are... final one. £1 billion. Who can guess what £1 billion is? No one. £1 billion is the amount we put through card top-ups every year. So hopefully many of you are putting your salary in or making bank transfers. If you use a prepaid card, you may have had card top-ups with Apple Pay or whatever, which takes a charge off your old Barclays or HSBC card and makes the money available straight away in a Monzo account. Very convenient. Too convenient. We're processing £1 billion a year through that mechanic, and it's costing us a huge amount of money. So that's why we turned off card top-ups for all new users, forcing them to use bank transfer, which actually they did very happily. But £1 billion is the amount that old users still put through card top-ups, even though we keep asking them really, really nicely. So there's a lively debate on our community forum, if you've seen it, about removing card top-ups entirely, even for old users, or potentially charging at cost. So if you topped up £100 from a card, it would cost you 50p. We're sort of undecided. I don't want to get back into this whole bait and switch argument that we had with the ATM fees. But then again, putting £1 billion a year through card top-ups when you could do a free instant bank transfer is hard to justify. So we'll be looking at ways of reducing that. Directly, if you could put your salary in, that'd be great. But secondly, if you have any bright suggestions, I would love to hear them. So those are all the updates I had. Over to Q&A. Are you going to be moderating, Naji?
Yeah.
Absolutely great. Questions?
Hello. Hi, Tom.
I can hear something coming out of this. Is this myself on delay live streaming? I might just mute it. There we go. Hi.
Hi. My question's about the marketplace.
Yep.
I think in a previous Q&A you described that it would very easily become a race to the bottom, especially for things that are very simple, like an interest rate, the kilowatt hours you pay for, the gas, this sort of thing. So if you have frictionless switching in that marketplace context, how can you have any product differentiation between the suppliers?
So some things there aren't product differentiation, and you just want the cheapest. Gas and electricity, I think, is the cheapest slash the lowest friction. Gas and electricity, it actually doesn't matter who supplies your gas. It's literally the same gas, right? It's a pure commodity. But the billing engine on top actually does matter because dealing with npower kind of sucks, and I use Bulb right now, which is great. So the way we think about it, really, Peter Thiel has this sort of view that every industry either tends towards perfect competition or perfect monopoly. And probably gas and electricity is the former, and things like savings account and mortgages similarly the former. as long as it's government backed and it's easy enough to sign up, you just want the highest interest rate. Same with the mortgages, you want the lowest interest rate. And so that's sort of why we, Monzo, don't want to do those balance sheet products. We want to do the customer interface, which is a marketplace which tends towards the latter, actually. It tends to be highly differentiated, brand-driven, service-driven. So the user experience matters a lot. And then partner with a bunch of people who offer these, relatively speaking, commoditized products to give our customers the best rates. So it's sort of taking the best of both worlds, I guess. Does that answer your question?
Yes, so, yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Hi. In
Hello.
light of the MasterCard outage about a week ago, along with all of the travel, going to different countries, China, for example, UnionPay is much more widely accepted. Would you ever consider offering additional cards on other networks like Diners, UnionPay, Visa, possibly for a fee, so we could have multiple cards on our account?
Yeah, the last couple of months have been really bad for payment schemes. So Visa had an outage as well about a month ago. Faster Payments had an outage about 2 weeks ago. I think these outages are going to be a fact of life, sadly. We're pretty open-minded about multiple schemes. Interestingly, launching into the US, each card has to support 2 schemes,
Yes,
interestingly.
So
So whether we do that in Europe or not, it's an interesting question, not one that I've heard asked before. Maybe, yeah.
it would be really nice as a customer. Thanks.
Thanks for the session.
G'day. I'm really interested to hear about your views on the culture of the firm and to what extent you think the culture is something you were premeditated. You said, I want a bank that looks like this and this, and to what extent it was a product of the people you took on, the experiences you've had as you've developed.
Yeah. I think culture is... a lot of companies pay lip service to culture. I don't really mean it. I think culture is at the heart of everything we do, every decision we make, every action we take. And I don't know, you have to go and ask a bunch of other people who work here, but I believe the culture here is the strongest I've seen in any company I've come into contact with ever, actually. It's awe-inspiring. And I would like to take all the credit for that, but it just wouldn't be true. I think a lot of it comes from my co-founders and the early hires we made. But a lot of it was also organic. Similarly with our kind of community-driven approach, it was absolutely something we talked about in the early days, but it wasn't... We also talked a lot of bullshit in the early days, and a lot of it hasn't worked. And so I did Y Combinator, and Paul Graham, the founder of Y Combinator, had this sort of metaphor, I guess, if you like. It's like you sort of press on each finger. You have 5 or 6 different plans. You try each one, and the one that really works, you just press into that plan. And so culture and being sort of community-driven and transparency is another one of those. They're absolutely things that we really cared about very deeply in the early days. We had no idea how strong they could become. And so that's just been amplified with every new hire we've made. And I think it is awesome, really. So the kind of values that drive us, transparency, one, first principles thinking, just obsession with the customer. And sort of as a secondary to transparency, being community-driven. I think it's... I love it. And it makes it a really great place to work, actually. I think a lot of different people from different backgrounds feel really comfortable coming to Monzo and kind of being their full self at work, which is, to me, incredibly important.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi there.
Hello.
You talked earlier about bringing new customers on board and your growth.
Yep.
For those of us who are already kind of integrated with Monzo, we've got our bank, we've got our salaries being paid in, we've got everything else being paid in,
Yep.
and are looking for more from their bank now. How are you doing that balancing between brand and bringing on new customers and those of us who want more from their bank now?
Sorry, let me turn this off so it doesn't disturb us. So I don't think they're different at all, actually. I think it's not as if we're sort of fixing the product and then just going to tell more people about it, although I kind of did imply that at the start. We spend a lot of our time talking to both existing customers and new customers, and the kinds of things that our existing customers are saying, this is what's stopping me being more committed to Monzo, putting more of my money and putting my salary and going full Monzo, are actually quite similar to the things that people who are not yet adopting Monzo are saying. Oops, sorry. And about 3 or 4 months ago, that was Apple Pay for a lot of people, honestly. And then we published the big list of sort of burned down features that we were missing. So international transfers, joint accounts, cash paying in is coming soon. The current highest one, we've solved a lot of those. Cash deposits will be coming, maybe not that soon. We are working on it. It's technically a bit harder. The next one, honestly, is earning interest on my savings. So a lot of people, particularly people who are a little bit older, have more cash, I guess, saved up, are saying, I'm earning whatever with Santander or HSBC, Monzo pays 0% interest, so I'm only going to keep using it for my disposable income unless you offer that higher interest rate. Totally fair, we hear you. So we will be offering both savings accounts and sort of investment accounts at risk with really, really attractive interest rates to hopefully both deepen engagement from existing customers and attract new customers. What's number one on your list?
The thing that's keeping me going kind of full Monzo, if you like, is obviously we've got a mortgage and we get cash back with Santander. We get a massive amount because everything goes through our Santander account. Yep. So we're getting £20 odd a month cash back. And obviously you're doing tie-ins with companies. But really the big thing for us is cash, paying in cash. Yep. And children's accounts, because we've got children, and we cannot.
How old are your children?
3. We've got a 3-year-old.
Oh, 3's hard.
Yeah, that's my point. That's exactly. And we've got a Santander child's account.
Yep. Okay. All fair points. So cash deposits should be coming soon. We should be paying more interest. Rewards are really interesting. The Santander just give money away. It's not as if there's like some smart way they've teamed up with direct debit providers. They're literally just giving you money as a hook to then sell you all the other stuff. It's hard for us to do as we're loss making, but. Rewards are interesting. They're not on the immediate roadmap, but in the next 6 or 12 months, I'd love to do rewards. And then children's accounts, definitely on the roadmap. We won't start with 3-year-olds, I'm afraid, but we'll start with the slightly older kids and then work our way down. But great points, thank you.
Thank you.
Question in the back.
Hiya. How do you see your ethical policy developing in the future?
So our ethical policy is very simple right now, and you can go on monzo.com/ethics and read all about it. It basically says that our investment strategy is very, very simple. We stick most of your deposits in the Bank of England at 0.5% interest, which earns a little bit of money, but is zero risk, relatively well. If the Bank of England goes under, we all have bigger problems. And a small amount, currently about 3 or 4% of deposits we lend to other Monzo customers on overdraft. So transparency basically is the number one thing there, because we will tell you if and when that changes, and then you can either say that's great or kick up a stink about it, and we probably won't do it. I think in the long term, we don't want to be a balance sheet heavy bank taking a lot of credit risk. So most banks will take in £100 of deposits and lend out £99. And it can go wrong sometimes, as in the financial crisis, and the taxpayer has to step in. We don't want to run that model of bank, really. There is a space for taking in savings and making big loans. People like Atom Bank and Shawbrook are doing that. Big savings accounts and things like mortgages. It's just not our business. We see ourselves much more as a transactional hub. So we offer the current account, the real-time visibility, the control center. But we're pushing a lot of that risky lending off to other banks who are better at it than us. So we're much more like a payment system. There are still risks there. They're just not credit risks. So they're not like the risk of lending money and not getting back. It's much more like the MasterCard problem. It's operational risk, IT resilience, making sure our systems are always available, that we're secure and scalable and reliable. So we just take different kinds of risks. But we're not expecting to do anything funky with our deposits, honestly. And if we do, we'll let you know.
Oh, jeez.
Thank you.
We've got a couple of questions from the stream, Tom.
Great.
Do you have any plans to create business accounts for receiving money?
For business accounts?
Yeah.
We're looking at it, and it will be no surprise to anyone in the banking industry. We are looking at it. There's about an £850 million pot of money called the Capability and Innovation Fund, or the Sorry We Got Bailed Out Fund from RBS. That's basically available to any bank that will launch business current accounts. So we may apply. We haven't yet applied for that. Applications aren't open. We may apply, and we may launch business accounts. That's really our current thinking. The kind of pros and cons for me, The pro is that business banking is very broken, and I think we could probably do a better job. And it's a problem I've faced in the past. We tried to open a business account for Monzo. Imagine going to a bank manager and then, I'd like to open a bank account. Like, oh, great, what does your business do? Like, we're a bank. No, we're a bank. What do you? Like, it's going to be very difficult. And then we went with our first investment check and paid in a couple of £1 million or something, and we asked for a plastic card. Like, we just deposited a lot of money with you. We'd like a plastic card so we can, buy things with all our money. And the guy was like, I'm really sorry, you've failed our credit checks because you're such a new company. It's like, yes, but you have £2 million of our money. We don't want credit, we just want access to that cash. And they're like, can't do it. It was absolutely astonishing. Anyway, so business banking is screwed. The flip side, though, is it's a risk of a distraction. That we're far from cracking personal current accounts, and so would it be a needless distraction to get into it? I don't know. That's a decision we're trying to take.
So you obviously mentioned that you're looking to grow pretty rapidly this year. What's been the most effective channel for paid user acquisition, or would you say it's all just been recommendation?
In the last 10 months, we've spent not literally zero, but like less than £1,000 on paid acquisition. And we've acquired hundreds of thousands of users. So it's word of mouth. Golden tickets and then just general word of mouth. So we're looking to build on that by introducing more networked features. So features that get better the more friends you have using them within the Monzo product. And then just viral mechanics. So golden tickets are a good example of a viral mechanic, just this sort of scarcity mechanic that golden tickets are on sale on eBay. Crazy. So that kind of stuff really. Paid it will feature, but currently it's 0% of our growth. We may scale it up to 5 or 10% of our growth, but it's expensive and it doesn't scale well, whereas this kind of product-driven growth scales really well.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I probably just done that. I like to see you run around.
Yeah, hi Tom.
Hi.
So basically, the way I see it, Monzo started with, let's say, enhancement of the information you have from transactions, right?
Yep.
And you want to leverage, let's say, the customer acquisition to become a financial hub, correct? But the way I see it, let's say, as you might be aware, let's say Google Pay, they are expanding in terms of features. So let's say the first point I mentioned, let's say some of the features could end up being redundant because they already have the customers and they would provide the same features. And the second point, let's say if you aim to be a financial hub, let's say, with open banking, let's say there are no barriers of entry, so anyone can let's say participate on that financial hub. So how do you see this going forward?
Why is Google going to beat us?
Because let's say in terms of
Is that the question?
not exactly.
Okay.
It's not just Google that is.
Is a non-bank US tech company going to come in and beat us?
The thing is, as you might be aware, let's say they provide this like bio-splitting or request payment. Sure. So they already have pretty much everyone, right?
But is that your question?
It's how do you answer those 2 points that I mentioned going forward?
Okay. So, for example, let's take Google, Facebook, Apple, and Amazon as sort of companies who've dabbled with this kind of functionality, whether it's payments or peer-to-peer, sort of point-of-sale purchase or peer-to-peer payments, broadly speaking. And Amazon are rumored to be going into financial services, partnering with, is it JP Morgan or someone in the US? I can't remember actually who it was. And you've got Square Cash, and you've got PayPal and Venmo. A lot of so I don't know, honestly, but the big US tech giants who are non-banks really, I see it as sort of like concentric circles. At the very, very core, you've got your checking account, your current account, and your salary. And then you might have your bill management, and then you have kind of peer-to-peer payments and payments around the edge. It feels to me like the big US tech companies are nibbling at the edges to address some kind of problem, to either deepen engagement or address some kind of problem. So with Amazon, they're just a bunch of people in the US without cards, without plastic cards, and it's hard to buy on Amazon without a plastic card. So the solution is, let's get 10 million of them a plastic card, and we'll just increase our customer base. But I feel like it's a really long way from sort of bill splitting and peer-to-peer payments at the very edge to, I trust you to manage my salary and make my rent. it's very hard to do that, even with open banking, without being the bank that controls the money. And the US tech giants absolutely do not want to become banks because it comes with a ton of extra regulation in the US.
But actually, I didn't say that. Let's say the Google Pay, they didn't want to replace your bank. They just enhance, let's say, your transactional information that you have.
Sure.
Yeah, and let's say the financial hub, let's say any bank can participate on that because, open banking, you can just request that information.
Okay, so maybe the question is, couldn't you build Monzo on top of open banking without being a bank?
It's a way of seeing it, yeah.
Okay, so yes, in 10 years. The reality of open banking today is the APIs suck. Like full credit to Lloyds, they're doing a really, really good job of opening up the AISP ones to get the information out, but you're still stuck that the information is 2 days out of date and doesn't have the full set of data because those systems drop it. The PISPs, so actually initiating payments, really, really suck. And that's just Lloyds. Some of the other banks are being less, let's say, embracing open banking regulation less than Lloyds, and I've dragged their heels on it. And so if you're trying to build this kind of aggregation hub today, I think you will really struggle. And people are giving it a really good shot, like Clio and Emma and Bud and Yolt and You Need a Budget and Money Dashboard. They're all they're okay, but I don't think anyone's really cracked account aggregation. That's not to say it won't work in 10 years' time. And that is my bigger concern, actually, that not that a US tech giant discovers this, it's that the APIs get good enough and a startup that's not yet been founded finds that aggregating model and a way to get 20 or 30 million customers overnight and becomes that new thing that doesn't have a name yet. It's not a current account, it's not a bank, it's not like PFM or account aggregation, it's this new smart tool that is the control center of your money. That's my biggest worry, that someone figures that model out and doesn't need to have a banking license. But it's not happened yet, and I think it might take 2 or 3 years, and it'll be something we're working on as well. So that question, I think, is interesting and we haven't solved, but we're certainly keeping an eye out for it. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, hi Tom. I never thought that I'd fall in love with bank, but yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. I'm an international student from Korea, and I'm answering all the Korean inquiries through my blog, but because I share my Monzo experience with others, and yeah.
Awesome.
So I'm curious about your plan to internationalize Monzo service to other countries or regions.
Yeah. Again, it's sort of down to focus, and as I said at the very start, only 12% of the UK have even heard of Monzo, and we're still loss-making. And so internationalizing is something I really, really want to do, but I'm a bit worried about incurring further losses without really stabilizing the base. So priority number 1 is getting to 2, 3, 4 million customers even next year, and getting to profitability in the UK, because that just gives you a really stable base on which to then jump into new geographies. And it makes fundraising a lot easier and cheaper, frankly, if you don't need to fundraise, if you're doing it just to expand. The second thing is, I think, especially when you're trying to be someone's primary current account, the bar you need to meet of them trusting with their salary is really high. So you go into the story of N26 launching in France, and I think the N26 app is great. They launched into France, and the translation was okay, but not perfect. It sounded like a German person speaking French. And then you open the app and you look at your IBAN, which is the kind of account number, and a bunch of numbers, and then DE, Deutschland. And all the French customers are like, should we FR? We're French, why is it DE? And it's just these very emotional kind of small touches which together makes the bank not feel native. And the problem with internationalization is you have to go to each market and really deeply understand the way people deal with money and communicate and think and feel to really customize your product to work really, really well. And that's hard. So yeah, it's the next step for us, but it's tricky. I think rushing it is a recipe for burning tons of money.
Another question from the stream, Tom. Is there any interest in doing something with cryptocurrency?
Not really. I've been a pretty outspoken skeptic of sort of blockchain and crypto assets. I think there are two separate things. One is the blockchain a useful or interesting piece of technology, and can it solve real problems for customers? And that former question is sort of like TBD. I think there are lots of problems customers have that can be solved more simply and more directly today with the application of 30-year-old technology. Some really could use the blockchain in a really interesting way. The second question is like crypto assets. Should you be able to trade Bitcoin or Litecoin or whatever in Monzo? And my answer there is like no, actually. So on the former, I'm like, yes, we're waiting. If there's an application that really solves problems for customers, absolutely, we're pretty agnostic, but I haven't seen one yet. The second is crypto assets. Like a friend wants to put 20 grand into Bitcoin, and we're like, that's just not something that Monzo will offer. It's like, for me, it's just like, it would be like a little, this is going to go down like a shit sandwich on Twitter. It's like we could put a roulette wheel in Monzo as well. We could just let you spin and put 10 quid on roulette, and sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. And it's like, I don't believe that that's our job as your current account. I believe our job is to get your salary in and pay your rent and make sure you're not overpaying your bills and just like help you save and invest if you want to. But speculating on crypto assets is, I don't think, the job of a mainstream bank today. So, no. Cue like angry social media.
Hello. I wonder what will be the new sources of revenue for Monzo. You talk about network-driven products. How does that help you increase new revenue?
The network feature is really about growth, not revenue. So revenue will come from two things. One in the short term is balance sheet lending, so spread the cost overdrafts. In the longer term, we're looking at the marketplace, really. This idea that we are the single place that you go to visualize all of your money and to sort of make the decisions you need to make. And so in the long term, ideally, every time we find you a way to save money, we take a small benefit of that, whether that's through a service fee or a commission or affiliate fee, whatever. A good example is gas and electricity. So 23 million households in the UK pay a gas and electricity bill. If you don't switch every year, typically, you get flipped from a pretty good tariff onto a standard variable tariff, and you overpay by £300 a year on average. 60% of households, that's 12 or 13 million households, never switch. So they're overpaying by 300 quid. So if Monzo makes it really, really easy to identify that and to switch onto a better tariff, you get 300, we take 10 or 15% of that as a commission, basically. That's the vision for the long term, that we do that across your mortgage, your gas and electricity, your phone bill, your car insurance, all obviously on an opt-in basis. So if you want to manage it yourself, totally fine. But for the 60% of households who don't, we're just easy like, yes, I'll have £300 back, please. And we just monetize that. So that's a long-term plan.
So do you see yourself having a break-even in the near future?
Hopefully. We're currently projecting, I think, sometime in 2020, but I've set the team the goal of breaking even by 2019. You may have seen last year we lost last financial year, which ended in February, I think we lost 30 or 31 million pounds. Our current monthly burn, so that the monthly loss right now is about 3 million, so 36 million annualized, but it's decreasing every month. So things like the unit economics I was talking about earlier, even though we're growing customers, we're now heading towards profitability every month. We were burning, I think, £3.8 million a month at the lowest point, and we're sort of gradually stepping our way up. The aim is by sort of mid to late 2019 to break even as a company in the UK. But a lot of work to get there.
Thank you. Hi. I was wondering, in regard to sending payments to friends and families, sure, or whoever, at the moment you offer only two options, which are either you send to another account holder for Monzo, or you enter the sort code account number for whichever bank they are from.
Yep.
Have you tried to integrate, or are you considering in any way to integrate payment solutions through messaging apps, for instance, or to streamline the process? Because, for instance, I have friends who use Revolut, for instance.
Yep.
I've tried to get them to Monzo, but they are happy with Revolut for now. And we kind of had to do the whole thing of, getting all the codes in, etc. And because there were like three of us, it was a bit fiddly because it would take time to every time, enter the payment details, things like that. So yeah, are you intending to integrate payments anywhere else?
not active, like it's sort of like what payment, you'd either invent a new payment scheme between them, or there is a directory called PayM, which is basically a giant lookup table. So if you've chosen to register via your bank, if someone has your phone number, you can look up the bank details sort of transparently, I guess. So you just put their phone number in, and then you can send them money. That's a cool system in theory, but only about 6 or 7 million accounts are registered on it right now, out of about 80 million in the UK, I think. So it's just really hard to bootstrap a payment scheme because you've got to get everyone to adopt it before it's useful. Really, it has this network effect property. So we'd be open to it, but it doesn't seem like there's an obvious solution yet.
Okay.
Yeah. Apologies. Try harder to get your friends on Monzo.
I will.
We've got a comment and question from the stream. To hear that cash deposits are coming is great. I'd like to hear some more about the challenges of that and getting it going.
Yeah, that's a great question. So cash is really expensive. That's the weird, inconvenient truth that no one talks about. That everyone's like, why? It's really expensive to deal with cash because it's really easy to steal cash. And so you've got to put a load of like controls and security around cash that just make it incredibly expensive. We'll do something like a partnership with like a network of grocery stores or corner shops or the post office. There are a bunch, so like PayPoint's a well-used one, or the post office have a product. But it incurs a fee because for the post office to take in £10,000 of cash, they've got to have an armoured vehicle come and like take the cash and transfer it to a cash sorting centre. It's just really dirty and expensive. And it also comes with a much higher money laundering risk. That there are lots of legitimate uses for cash. There are also a lot of very easy illegitimate uses of cash. And our government is pretty keen to prevent the latter. So it will involve something like going to a post office or a corner shop and depositing money and it kind of appearing in your app relatively swiftly. The reality probably is that there will be some small service fee to cover the cost. I don't know what that's going to be right now. We're not looking to profit off it at all, but the reality is a tiny, tiny fraction of our users will use it, and it will cause a kind of disproportionately large amount of cost that those people will cover.
We've got time for about 3 more questions, so sorry if I don't get to you.
Thank you. Hi.
Hello.
We're really enjoying your radical transparency over the company that we work for.
That's great.
However, just wanted to ask, in the context of competition,
Yep.
publishing your roadmap, how does that? How do you convince sort of stakeholders the benefit of publishing in the roadmap? How does that outweigh the impact of letting competitors know that what you're up to?
Overall, I think it still is dramatically in our favour. The kinds of people who bother to read and replicate our roadmap, and now there are some, they're relatively small competitors, and their brand awareness is less than ours. And so the gambling block's a really good example, that we announced it a couple of weeks before it was ready to launch, and then a couple of other competitors also did the gambling block. That is a great thing for society. It's really, really good that other financial services providers are offering these really kind of pro-social features that help vulnerable people stay in control of their money. You didn't see the big banks copying it because they're just really, really slow. So it's sort of, I don't know, right now it just doesn't feel like it matters that much if one of the other kind of smaller or newer banks copies it. Just most people in the UK have not heard of any of us at all.
And have you had any pushback from your stakeholders?
Yeah, sort of our board, you mean, or investors?
Yeah.
Investors. No.
Good to know.
I mean, eventually we'll get big enough so that really, really big companies start to pay attention. But even they just move so slowly that getting something onto their roadmap it's a kind of 2-year effort. I mean, Barclays announced that you can now freeze and unfreeze your card. It took them 3 years to copy that. So, I think we're fine for the moment. We'll keep it under review, but. Hey.
Hey, Tom. Quick one for you. So you've partnered with the likes of Yolt and Plum and stuff where you can give Monzo information to another app.
Yeah.
I'd love it to go the other way. So rather than going on Yolt to see all my accounts, I'd rather stay with Monzo and see like my credit card spend. Anything you can do?
Yeah. the companies you've mentioned have registered as AISP providers, account information service providers, which means that they can come to us and say, we'd like access to your PSD, to your open banking APIs, please. And we basically have to say, here you go. So I love those companies, but it's not as if we've kind of gone out and struck commercial partnerships with them. They've just used the open banking APIs, and rightly so. But I totally take your second point, and thank you very much for it. And I also totally agree with you. It's something I would love us to be doing more on, and over the next month or 2 or 3, hopefully you should see more of it. So for example, I think you can get Amex spend via these APIs, so that a lot of people use Amex for the free cash flow, but imagine being able to see that in real-time update in your Monzo account and almost put cash aside into a pot to be able to pay it off when it comes due. It'd be super cool. Or if you've got an HSBC savings account, be able to see that. Or even like your pension, right? Everyone has, more or less, if you work for a company now, you have an employer contribution pension. I have no idea how much it is. It'd be really cool to see that as a pot accumulating value over time, even if you can't see it. So you can see all in one place, like the sum total of your assets and liabilities. That's ultimately what we're trying to build Monzo to be. So yeah, absolutely. Hopefully we'll have more time to start working on it very shortly.
Cool. I think we've got time for just one last question. Who hasn't asked yet?
Okay, I feel privileged to have this last question. And first of all, it's the first time I've attended this, and it's really interesting.
Thank you for
very
coming.
much. So I'm hearing loud and clear you want to be the payment center, you want to be the current account center for customers, and I get that.
Yep.
Is there a danger that as people become more financially mature and want more services, you start losing customers who go back into a standard provider? And I mean, there's always going to be an area for the very top end, for the top investment managers. But for the mass affluent, do you believe the HSBCs and the others, their model is broken and you're going to break that? How do you see the future, say in 10, 15 years' time, as the generations get older?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I think if we froze Monzo in time, as it was right now, you're absolutely right. I don't think we'd keep up, and I don't think we'd continue to attract customers or retain our customers as they matured and had more diverse needs. So we need to keep working on it. But actually, I think the stuff we have coming over the next 3 or 6 or 12 months means that we will be, if we do our job properly, I think it will be a little bit like the move from the kind of Nokia analog phones to the smartphone, where it's like everyone's like, yeah, my Nokia's fine, it sends text messages, I can phone people, the battery lasts a week, I can play Snake. That's what a phone does, right? I think what is coming is a new category of service that solves just a much, much wider range of problems. And we're not there yet. We're like 1.5, version 1.5 to sort of that future. I think when you see that, when the mainstream customers see that, it will just be so self-evident, so obvious that of course I want this thing. Like, why did I ever go and manually renew my car insurance and haggle on the phone with the guy on the end of the line, or switch my gas and electricity, or figure out where to invest my ISA, or on and on and on. These sort of about 20 manual administrative tasks. No one loves doing those, and we don't solve them yet either. But I think over time we need to add those things so that it becomes so compelling and self-evident that you would use one of these things that it creates a new category of service. I don't think it's just called a current account anymore, or PFM or whatever. I think we need a new name for it. It's like that financial advisor of old, but delivered in an app by software for the mainstream. So that's, I think, how we address that problem. But thank you. And I think we'll wrap up there. I will be around for 15 minutes or so to answer any more questions. I really just wanted to end by saying thank you so much for giving up your Monday evening to hear me ramble on. It's been an absolute pleasure. So thank you very much. Cheers.